Very good afternoon, and thank you so much for having taken the time to join today's webinar. My name is Jay Reddy. I'm with the cybersecurity team here in management. And guys, thank you so much for having taken the time. Today's webinar is going to be around a very specific and a special topic that is very timely as to how organizations are evolving as we speak. We're going to be talking about a very important aspect of IT security and how the landscape is essentially changing if you are a cybersecurity leader and if you essentially look forward to implementing certain practices to adopt to what is taking place right now. We are talking about the new normal. We are talking about working remotely and how exactly can organizations defend their cybersecurity both internally and externally. And that's the agenda for today's session. The webinar is being recorded. Just in case if you want a copy of the webinar, please drop a message. I'd be more than happy to send across the video. In case if you have any questions coming up during the course of the webinar, feel free to shoot your questions then and there, and we try to have an interesting and an engaging session as much as possible. I would definitely love to answer your questions live to see if we can, find out some nice use cases, check if we can answer those cases that you are probably facing, because we've been here at Manage Engine working remotely for almost about 120 days right now. We are an organization of almost about 8,000 employees big, and all of us are working remotely. In addition to my personal experience securing the network for Manage Engine and Zoho, I will also be, through the course of the webinar, sharing our collective experience as to what we've been doing right here, helping and enabling organizations around the world to go remote and set up a strong cybersecurity posture. So we'll be having a lot of insights. So do grab a notepad and a cup of coffee. We have an interesting line of use cases which can essentially be the make or break for your organization while working remotely. We'll focus on one specific aspect of cybersecurity today. We'll essentially be circling around how attackers are making use of this specific scenario, the opportunity that has presented itself to the attackers. How are they exploiting it to their benefit is what exactly we'd be dealing through today's session. That being said, thank you once again for having made it to the presentation today. It means a lot to us. We'll get started with the presentation. Like I pointed out a while ago, have questions, feel free to shoot. I'll try to take them live. All right, so agenda is quite straightforward. We'll have three aspects to today's session. We've got almost about a hour ahead of us, and we'll try and first understand as to what's majorly happened to the security landscape and your IT infrastructure as well. We'll try to talk about what is remote work, the impacts of working remotely on your existing landscape, and how is it changing the logistics of your IT operations, and what all should you be considering. Is network security going to be extinct? Are we going to be talking about only identity security? There are so many questions a lot of people are asking. We've been resolving issues. We'll be sharing those experiences. We'll go a little further to talk about how these conditions are suitable for attackers and what sort of threats can you expect and can you be prepared for. That's going to be the second part of the session. And it goes without saying, we'll also work together a couple of strategies, ones that you can implement right away, right after this webinar, and tell me how it's working out for you. So we are going to be doing a 360-degree for your cybersecurity strategy. We'll try to understand the landscape. We'll go a little forward talking about the attacks that are prevalent right now as we speak, and how exactly can we understand the kill chain and strategies to go about doing a proactive cybersecurity framework for your organization. So as we speak, there's this new normal. Employees have started working remotely. My organization is a classic example. So is the case with a lot of us who are joining today. Now, the challenge right here is, for a very, very long time, all of us have been used to the idea of working from within office. At best, if you had employees working remotely, they'd probably be Salesforce on the go, right? People working in your sales team, or probably a couple of C-level officers or executives who travel all the time. Now, we are talking about this landscape shift where we were never really prepared for this big a quantum jump, and now all of our users are working remotely. A few of us have started working from office. We've resumed normal work. A few countries, the lockdown is up. People have started resuming business, but still, as I discussed with business leaders, a lot of companies around the world have found remote working to be an option that they're looking at long term. If you're someone joining from the Silicon Valley or California, you'd absolutely know as to how things are right there. A lot of big conglomerates like Google, Facebook, Microsoft, a lot of them have announced remote work till the end of the year. What does this mean to your existing security setup? All those infrastructures that you've set up and all those solutions that you've already put in place, does that become void, or can you tweak it to your advantage? Is the question that we'd be answering. And here in this equation, what is taking priority is just one aspect to your entire security equation, which is users. So we are going to be talking about this one simple aspect. Can you trust your users enough? Now, this is a situation where your users are bringing their own devices, but if you were to ask me, they're not just bringing their own devices, they're very much bringing their own vulnerabilities too. Because one common problem that all these users working from their home offices and small offices or remote offices is basically the security of their existing networks. They can be on a Wi-Fi, they can be tethered to a home network, which need not have the protocols that you had established while they were at work. So this is a major turn down for a lot of organizations. And considering that in mind, in addition to the whole deal of how your user dynamics is constantly changing, they don't work within office hours anymore. There's a lot of flexibility in terms of when they can log in, when they can log out, what do they access. And trust me, it's a little disheartening when I hear administrators and cybersecurity folks that they had to water down their security policies just for the benefit of better access, just for the benefit of ease of access for their users and keeping the business going on. So we'll try and demystify as many number of common problems. We'll try and talk about what is happening with respect to VPNs. Now, I'm pretty sure a lot of us who are joining today aren't big fans of VPN. VPNs do have majorly established vulnerabilities. And for a very, very long time, we've ignored them because only a small chunk of our users were using it. But now, given the fact that almost all your users tether to your corporate network through VPN, it's important to take that into consideration too. We'll be talking about firewall, VPN, threat intelligence, and quite a lot around proactively mitigating an attack that could be from outside. Not just that, even if it's from inside, we are going to be talking about insider threats and mitigating them too. So the bottom line is going to be your users and how exactly can they be that flux point in your whole equation of cybersecurity. We'll be talking about that. Now, the biggest challenge right here is the whole idea with how it's happening, because just after about 30 days since the whole remote work situation started, we were running surveys and we figured out that there's a phenomenal jump in the number of users or organizations who adopted cloud applications for collaboration. Now, this is a very new spectrum. A lot of us must have fast tracked ourselves into maybe, let's say, a solution like Office 365. We must have started using Teams. We must have started using Zoom. The very presentation today is happening over Zoom. So a lot of collaboration applications have been provisioned for our users. Now, back in the day, if your network devices were your perimeter, now your user identities have become perimeter. What am I trying to tell you right? Your security is only as strong as your weakest link, which is your users. Now, your users have 10 different identities. They try to log into multiple systems. What could go wrong? 100 things could go wrong. And one common problem that we've been facing recently is the whole idea that attacks are taking a long time to even discover. So that is a very big challenge that we're trying to solve right now. In fact, as we speak, we've seen a tremendous surge in the last couple of months in terms of the attacks that are taking place. More number of phishing attacks, more number of spywares and malwares and RATs, as we call it, remote access trojans. They're named right, they're rats. So how do we get these pesky attacks out of our way? That's the big question. Can user education be an option right here? Is that good enough is again the question, because we've been trying to tell our users to not click malicious emails. We've been telling users and giving them best practices, but have they been really following? That's the $1 million question. So we're talking about attackers who are getting extremely smart, trying to take advantage of the situation. And all that they're looking for is that one weak entry spot. And while your users are working remotely, they present the attacker with 100 of such opportunities for them to crack through. And trust me, our users can very easily be engineered with simple attacks. That's the whole deal why Microsoft came up with this infographic saying it's not really as secure as you think. In fact, this is a very good piece of information right here. They came clean saying if you're an organization using Active Directory, let's say, if one of your system goes down, all right, just one endpoint is compromised. We're talking about targeted business email compromise attacks that are happening as we speak. Now, what if one of those accounts got compromised and the AD credentials also followed that, right? Even before you could realize, within a matter of 2 days, the entire domain can come crumbling down. That's not even the scariest part. Don't get me wrong for sounding paranoid. This is the reality of the situation that we're going through. Because the challenge is what happens afterward. Attackers are making use of the opportunity that they have right now to exfiltrate data. And while they do these exfiltrations, they fly very easily under the radar without tipping off any of your, red flags. The primary reason being there's a huge transfer of data front and back happening into your system, out of your system through all the remote connections that are already established. And it becomes pretty easy for the attacker to disappear in plain sight. And on top of it, your users are still clicking on emails that say they are from the CDC or the World Health Organization giving information regarding corona. In India, it's even worse. About 3 weeks back, this very specific problem happened, and I happened to receive one of those emails too. So the email was very well written. It seemed like it came from the government of India. It offered a 10,000 rupees, compensation to all users who are at home. It was more like a fund that they were offering. A lot of people fell for it. They clicked it. They gave away certain critical information like social security number and a couple of other things. Only ended up to be attacked later. So this is a big event right here in the Indian cybersecurity space. Especially, it happened with one of our major government financial institutions, and even before they could like get on top of the situation, enough damage was done. Credentials were compromised, right? So this is the big challenge right here. Now, if you're really wondering as to how is this directly correlated to your users accessing their personal email IDs and probably clicking on a domain that says COVID, or trying to get some information on corona or the whole pandemic, it turns out these domains that they so-called COVID information domains, there's been like a 55% surge in domains that are malicious, fake domains that portray fake information and try install malwares into your system. And these are the same, mind me, these are the same devices that your users are going to use to access your corporate network as well. These malwares and trojans are very smart that way to get into your system, and even before you could know, a lot of your systems could be infected. So what do we do? The challenge right here is there are many moving parts. If we try to fix one, we might end up breaking the whole system, stop business continuity for users. So what I've done is I've kind of put together four simple pillars, four simple measures that you could take, go back, go right away and implement, that could probably help you stop all of this. I wouldn't still say you can be 100% secure. 100% security is a myth. You just can't do that. If I were to have one recommendation to start off today's presentation, is do consider and acknowledge the fact that an attacker can be lurking in your system as we speak. So we'll start with something very fundamental, which is being able to get the bird's eye view of your entire environment. At any given point in time, you should be able to access, view, and get hold of any information of all these multiple moving parts. Back in the day, it was all network devices. Now, what's equally important is to get hold of your user identities and the activities these identities are performing. It could be something like the privileges that they have. You should be in the know at all points in time. That's something that I want to start with. And then going forward, we'll look at certain aspects of your defense system. We'll touch upon VPN, and we'll touch a little bit upon firewalls and what's to happen with firewalls. All right, we'll go one step further. We'll see how attackers operate. It could essentially be only two types, one from the outside and the other from the within the organization. We'll try putting a stop to both of these types of attacks. All right, but getting a bird's eye view, that's the first recommendation that I have for you for today. Being able to be in the know, being able to get on top of your situation. Now, this might seem like a very basic thing, but most of the times it turns out, since we have done all this fast tracking into cloud applications, and we've done like hybrid systems, or we've subscribed to one of those public cloud platforms, a lot of loopholes do exist. In fact, almost about a couple of months back, the Department of Homeland Security, the DHS, had to step in to give away best practices for these migrations. Now, trust me, this is quite critical. And when you're trying to do such a major migration, many moving parts, take into consideration how you can correlate all of this under a single view. Because we are talking about workstations that need to be monitored, we're talking about users' devices that need to be monitored, domain controllers that can potentially be targets of attacks, databases that hold potential intellectual property for your organization, or user data, or customer data, even worse, given the fact that there are new regulations like CCPA that are coming up, compliance regulations that are coming up. Customer data can be quite critical as well. Goes without saying, your network devices, your IPS, your IDS, your servers, all of them are quite critical and have to be monitored. Now, most of us who are joining today might already have a monitoring system in place, but the trick right here is to be able to correlate all of these together as one good story. The problem in most of the cases is, even if you are someone who is like a fan of the event viewer, I'm pretty sure no one is, you do have access to quite a lot of data. Day in, day out, tons and tons of logs get generated. It could be something as simple as a logon failure that you'd want to like quickly be notified of, repetitive logon failures. That could be an indicator of compromise. So you will need to look for solutions that can, out of the box, readily put together indicators of compromise into one nice story, into one nice dashboard, give you access to what you need to be potentially looking for, and not really guide you in the wrong direction. We're talking about every aspect of your environment, not just your network, but also your identities. That is the catch. So look for a solution that can sit right at the middle of your entire infrastructure, all right, right at the center of your infrastructure. Talk to your identity access management, talk to your data access governance, talk to your CASB, cloud access security brokering. If it can do that, nothing better than that, because we are talking about being able to crunch all this log data, find out top logon failures or account changes that have happened, accounts that have been modified or deleted, or you'd want to know even something as simple as users who locked themselves out. You'd be surprised as to what sort of insights can you get, and privileges that are being modified for users, or files that are being accessed for the first time, or an application being installed. So we're talking about getting hold of every aspect of your system and all these moving parts put together into one story. Failure is definitely one of the most simplest places to start with. If there are any compromises, if there are any repetitive failures, you should be able to get on top of the situation. And there are two sides to it, not just the physical devices we are talking about, also the activity that is happening on these devices. And if you can set threshold based alerts, nothing better than that. So big question right here is, are thresholds good enough? We'll have that answered in a while. So my first tip, a very simple one: if you do not have a SIM solution, no problem at all, just start with turning on your auditing. Get all the right events audited. So I have a list of 25 identity access events, or AD events to be precise, that need to be monitored while you are at remote working. While you're remote working, 25 remote working event IDs that you need to quite definitely look into. Towards the end of the webinar, just drop me a message. I'll share the list. Those are the event IDs that you need to look into when your organization is working remotely. So that's one tip for you, and I'll have that written down towards the end of the webinar. Just drop me a message. I'll give you the event IDs. All right, I've noted that down. Going a little further, we're talking about setting up a strong defense mechanism. Now, goes without saying, firewall VPN. We've been very strong about the whole concept of setting up strong firewall rules and VPN. But is firewall good enough for how things are operating right now? Because oftentimes attacks can be detected at the intrusion stage if you have a monitoring firewall setup. If you just look into these logs, most of the times you'll be able to call that out. So attackers or hackers, they try to find loopholes in your firewall and they try to use it to their advantage. Commonly known fact. A look at the firewall logs can reveal anomalous activity, and that's the first thing that you'll need to be looking into. So how do you get hold of what is anomalous and what is not is the question right here. So I'll walk you through a couple of use cases. With respect to firewalls, start looking at things like denied connections can give you tremendous insights. So if it's a malicious actor that we're talking about, trying to access one of your systems, they somehow compromise one of the credentials and they're trying to access one of your resources, and if your firewall is blocking it, multiple repetitive denied connections, that means something is wrong. So is the case with allowed firewall traffic. It is equally important to monitor that as well. Repetitive firewall failures followed by a successful firewall access could mean that the attacker found a loophole and got in, and also at any given point in time have complete know-how on what's the top source of traffic to your firewall, in and out, see what's happening. So with respect to VPN, there's a lot that you can essentially be doing. With respect to VPN, you'd start monitoring certain critical metrics that keep your VPN integral, that are integral to your VPN. We can talk about a few use cases like failed VPN logons based on users. So if there are repetitive failures or access to VPN that are, that your system pinpoints, that means an attacker is probably not able to crack through that layer of security. They somehow got through your VPN, they compromised your VPN, they're getting into it, but at an identity layer, they are stopped. Unauthorized VPN accesses or unauthorized VPN failures. So that is something that you can look at. And logouts, again, very simple foolproofing that's out there for a lot of VPNs. So the problem right here is VPNs aren't secure enough. The whole idea that whatever is within the network is secure and whatever traffic from outside is not secure, I don't really buy it because it's fundamentally flawed. So how do we go about rejigging it? It all starts with just being able to closely look at what do these logs mean, what can they possibly point you towards. So we put together simple dashboards, all of them for remote working cases, give you like a quick overview on who are the users who are logged in. So this is something that we just recently built based on the requests that we've been receiving from organizations we've been working with, being able to look at all the users who logged in remotely right now, check whose firewall rules have been compromised, check when are these VPN log on, log off times, check how long are these sessions, are there repetitive failures, are there completed sessions, is someone being kicked out, how many live sessions are going through, can give you tremendous loads of data just for you to be able to spot that one attack vector. So that's my recommendation for you. So be able to find out if there are any vulnerabilities in your VPN too. So that's something that you can always look at. What I'll do is I'll give you a couple of points. Top of my mind, I can tell you most of the time VPN rules are outdated. VPNs are in general vulnerable. The servers are vulnerable. Their availability is vulnerable. There are recommendations from CISA too, Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Agency, that's asked you to patch your VPN. Many a times that gets not done. VPN servers don't get patched regularly, vendors don't do it regularly because it can be quite a tedious process and it can probably hinder the ongoing connections. So if an enterprise is fully patched with all the right VPN servers, firewalls are patched, routers are patched, hackers are going to take a little bit of there's going to be a lag for them to get into your system, but still I would recommend to start setting up threshold based alerts if there are any deviations for the cases that I just pointed you out to. All right. So with respect to how you go about, if I want to give you one more case, DDoS attacks are quite common. So VPNs are no exception to denial of service attacks. So how do you go about tackling that? If you need to be in the know, you should be able to at all times check activity that's going on in your VPN, be able to monitor access to your critical servers. And if there is any server that's going down, you need to be notified. A couple of things like that. It's always 360-degree. It's not just one aspect of your security. So regularly monitor the session activity of each and every VPN user and look for any anomalous VPN usage behavior. That is going to be my trip. And it's quite difficult for you to do it manually, hence a system that can do it for you in one single dashboard. All right. Along those lines, we were talking about repetitive logon failures. Let me give you probably one easy way to solve this. So the solution that I'd be walking you through most of the time, examples that I'd be quoting is from Log 360, our SIEM solution. One component in Log360 can easily help you identify lockout reasons. Now, this has two benefits to it. Number one, it can help you quickly call out if the lockout was a legitimate lockout, if the user honestly forgot their password and locked themselves out, or was it a potential cybersecurity attack? You'd be able to find out and conduct a root cause analysis. It gives you context at every level. That is what you need to be looking for in a solution. And it also helps you in the process resolve these pesky problems like account lockouts. That's the last thing that you want. Password reset and account lockout calls have been troubling a lot of remote organizations and remote help desks. We can get this resolved if we have an account lockout analyzer that tells you what was the reason. It could be a stale credential, it could be a wrong network drive mapping, or it could be a scheduled task with a service account that doesn't function anymore. So multiple reasons, if you're able to pinpoint to whether it was a security reason or a logistic reason, nothing better than that. All right. So we've discussed two safety measures so far. We started off saying being able to monitor all aspects or all moving parts or endpoints in your system is quite important, and correlating that data is important. We just discussed as to how mechanisms like VPN and firewalls are important, and what aspects of VPN and firewall should you be monitoring, what deviations right there, and getting a dashboard does make a sea of difference. The next aspect of it is going to be from an attacker's standpoint. Now, quite obviously, attackers most of the time are from outside. 60% of attacks are from outside your organization. Being able to be just notified right when something is going wrong is definitely a superpower, because we are talking about a situation where users are logging in from different geographies, different IP addresses, lots of variables that are quite unpredictable. So being able to detect an intruder can make a sea of difference, and that's where we thought we'd bring some intelligence to the whole thing. So can we just start off with something as simple as threshold based attacks? Alerts, can we set up and make it simple for you to say what's a critical issue, what's a troubling issue, and what's something that requires your attention? Because now it's all about prioritizing one problem over the other. We are not talking about not having problems, it's just prioritizing one over the other. Whichever is critical, those are the ones that you need to be quickly addressing. If the server is down, if there's a DDoS attack underway, if there's a ransomware that's happening, you need to be on the know, in the know, and on the go to be able to stop it. And that works out well if you have threshold based attacks. 99% of the times, it helps to have this first level of security, which is setting up the right thresholds and being notified on your phone, on your push. Even you can receive like an alarm notification if you set the tool right. Multiple ways to be reminded, multiple ways to be notified. Threshold based alerts can save the day. So the whole idea is to not really stop with just alerts, right? We're talking about a situation where attackers are quite smart. And as we speak, one common observation that we were able to make here at Manage Engine through the surveys that we ran, through the discussions that we had, was across the world, there's a tremendous surge in number of organizations that have started exposing their internal applications. Their internal applications are on the intranet and they're public facing. Maybe one layer of security, simple authentication that can easily be cracked through. That's a big, big problem. Easy access to your entire network security, and that could be a challenge. So what you need to be starting to look at is, can you defend at every level or every touch point with some sort of intelligence? And that's where our modular cybersecurity integrations come into the picture. So we help you, put together Legos, different aspects of cybersecurity together, whichever works for you. Threat intelligence is one such module that we built into the tool. You can customize, you can take threat intelligence along with you and plug it into any of your existing SIEM solutions too. It works like magic. So we're talking about being able to detect intruders with threat feed data. And this threat feed data that we're talking about is quite dynamic in nature. It's real time. We keep updating our threat feed. We look for malicious IPs, malicious URLs, and malicious domain names. If there are any access requests from these, we immediately notify you, and most of the times we in fact help you stop them. So there's definitely an increased vulnerability in the whole work from home arrangement. No second guessing right there. And remote access trojans, like I told you a while back, are very persistent and can be a big problem if you don't have it checked real time. So a couple of things that I want to point out with respect to threat analytics and threat intelligence would be to be able to get real-time alerts when there's a malicious source that is trying to intrude into your network. And that happens only when you have an updated database of high-risk accesses or high-risk access requests. So have that in mind. An automatic association of a workflow mechanism to remediate the whole threat immediately can be, again, a lifesaver. So you know that there's a problem, you know that you're under attack, you know that this connection got initiated from a malicious or a suspicious IP address or a source, and immediately you can start your rebuttal with your workflow that starts saying these operations need to be performed. It could be something as simple as an extra level of authentication to something as smart as shutting the whole system down. In fact, if let's say it's a file that's being installed, a ransomware under progress, you can call for scripts that immediately execute and stop or kick out that endpoint from where the connection is being triggered, or block the IP from where that's happening. Quite a lot that you can do if you had the power of threat intelligence and threat analytics, because millions of dynamically updated pieces of information from around the world, from multiple databases that we have signed up to in terms of the geolocation, the reputation score of the source, so on and so forth, get taken into consideration so that you get better visibility through the whole correlation that you'd be doing. So it's all about the context, right? You need to be able to spot the context and verify the context. When I say context, it could be quite a lot. I'm going to talk about adaptive authentication through the presentation today, and I'll tell you why it makes sense to have context to every access that's happening. All right. So we've been talking about threat intelligence, right? And being able to stop an attacker, right? So I thought I'll put together one quick tip for you. A lot of us working remotely, the easiest way to foolproof access requests is to have a second factor of authentication. So in this case, an attacker had access to the admin account. They found out the credentials, but turns out there's a wall right there, and the attacker is not able to proceed any further because there's a second factor, and in this case, it's a second factor where it's a verification code that gets sent to the administrator's email ID. So without that second factor, the attacker cannot proceed any further. So this is what we are talking about. So not just being able to predict or prevent an attack, but also absolutely foolproof your system at the very logon level. Even if some aspect of your security is compromised, all right, even if the password itself is compromised, it's still not be able to proceed accessing any of these accounts because there are second factors associated with it. So if you're on Azure, let's say, if you just move to the cloud, if you set up an hybrid system, please do make use of the Microsoft Mobile Authenticator. It's free of charge. Please do set it up and you can quickly get going. Because even if you're on Office 365, a quick tip for you, Office 365 Secure Score Dashboard. The Secure Score Dashboard can give you insights and tips on what you should be doing. And the first tip that almost all instances get is the second factor of authentication for you. So we're talking about becoming smart, right? Guys, in case if you have any questions, feel free to shoot. I'm trying to cover as much as information as possible. The whole webinar is being recorded. Any part of the webinar, if I'm like pushing it through, I mean, if I'm like being a little fussed about it, do not worry. The video is going to be with you. I'll try and give you as much as information as possible in action items. Along those lines, we just saw how MFA can come to the rescue. And can we make it a little better? Because we already have the capability of understanding all these different vectors with respect to context. Putting together and tracking the user's logon activity can make a difference. We're talking about adaptive authentication. If your system can proactively look for deviations in usual behavior, now that can be a game changer. Now, your users are very difficult to predict. A while back, we were talking about threshold-based alerts. Now, threshold-based alerts are going to be okay as long as everything is normal and there's probably a fixed working time and things like that, or users working from within the office and things like that. But now every user gets to work at a flexible hour. They're working from different geographies. Their network devices are not the same. Their IP reputations aren't the same. Multiple variables right here, and that is a challenge. every user needs to be given separate dedicated attention and tracking. If that doesn't happen, it's going to be difficult. So what we did was we put together a module that can start tracking every user based on their own past history. So there are no blanket values right here, and everything that is happening is going to be based on context, based on past history, based on the risk profile that is drawn for that specific user. So let's say J, the user, accesses it from this specific geography here in India, all right, and all of a sudden I have an access from Nigeria. That's superhuman travel. I can't do that in 30 minutes time. So that is a deviation that gets quickly picked up. An extra layer of authentication steps in, like the one that you just saw. So being able to get hold of context and being able to stop log on of this sort with adaptive authentication, with device, network, location. I'm bringing my own device, so that has to be mapped into my system. All of that can make a sea of difference when you're looking at a 360-degree cybersecurity strategy. So I started off saying it's important to have threat intelligence in your system to prevent suspicious logons from bad IPs, from bad geographical locations, or ones with bad reputation score. I gave you a solution as to how adaptive authentication can be your redemption. Your threat intelligence lets you know that there's a deviation, helps you stop. Your adaptive authentication, even if something goes wrong, can be your foolproof mechanism to stop any such activity from proceeding any further. Extra layers of security get thrown in. Few more challenge questions are thrown in. Extra layers of authentication need to be done before the user gets to go to the next level. So that's the beauty of adaptive authentication. So far we've covered three important pillars. We started off understanding how monitoring can be important. We spoke about why VPN and firewalls are something that you need to look into more closely than ever before. A couple of reports that are quite important if you're setting up VPN for your users. We then discussed as to what could be the situation and how can you essentially prevent an attack if it's external from outside. We saw how threat intelligence can make a lot of change while your users are working remotely. The next one is safety from within. Users can go rogue. Users now have privileges that they did not have a while back. Now they can use it to their advantage. They can try doing something malicious, because one classic example that I encountered a couple of weeks back was one of the organizations I was working with. They moved all their data to the cloud, to OneDrive specifically, and it became a little overwhelming for them to keep track of who's accessing the files and folders. Being able to generate reports for access to Office 365 files and folders, checking who's copying these files and folders, if they are doing any bulk modifications as we speaking, if they're copying any files or folders to a physical device. Now that can be a problem. We're talking about potential regulations like CCPA or HIPAA if you're in healthcare organizations being compromised. So how do we track that? Along those lines, we'll need to be able to check users' file permissions, their folder permissions, their access requests from inside. You can again do thresholds, but in my opinion, thresholds aren't going to be the best way to do it. There's no streamlined access right here. People try to get away with extra access. They try to somehow cut through, get access, state some reason and hoard access most of the time. That's what we see happening when we check app usages and when we check file and folder usages. 90% of the time, turns out most of these users who got the access don't even log in, don't even use. They just want the access. And that's why we thought putting together user and entity behavior analytics can help you quickly spot who's the culprit. So we're talking about machine learning algorithms that can detect anomalies in terms of the volume of access, in terms of the time of the day of access, in terms of what activities are they performing. Is that a usual activity? Is there a deviation in that user's activity? Why is this user who never creates or modifies a group or a folder or a file or permissions on that is doing it for the first time? Things like that can become difficult to find if you were to just look at log data. So you need intelligence, you need machine learning that does that for you, and UBA or UEBA as we call it does that, both user and entity behavior in terms of the count, in terms of the time, in terms of the resources that are being accessed. I'll start with a very quick example right here. All right, we're talking about logon activity. Now, this can seem like a very simple case, but if I give you some context, okay, let's talk about an attack like a brute force attack. So a brute force attack is probably repetitive logon failures followed by a successful logon. Now, if you look at it from an event viewer point of view, most of the time it becomes difficult to find out. They get away with these attacks. And attackers are being quite smart right now, not doing brute force anymore. They're doing password spray. Now, how do you prevent that? Now, when you give some context to it, all right, when I say it like this, there were 100 repetitive logon failures that happened in under less than a minute, followed by one successful logon on a critical file or a folder or a server. And right after that, there was an access to those files and folders. An application was installed. This was done for the first time. The user had never installed such an application. Followed by that, there was packets of data transfer happening from inside your organization to a resource or an IP outside. So when I say it like this sounds a little scary. And how does this basically work is when you can put together all those data together as a story, build context around it, get actionable insights and not alerts for negative positives. So we're talking about false positives. Sorry, we're talking about false positives and not falling prey for these false positives. So if you're able to put together all these data that you have in form of a context, in form of business insight, that is the make or break. And most of the cases, yes, remote desktop activity and island hopping, that's a big problem. Once one of your servers are down, once one of your endpoints are down, even before you could notice the other ones keep getting compromised. You know how easy it is to do just basic LDAP queries on one of your users with no privileges at all, with just the read privileges. You'd be able to find out a lot of information, and attackers get quite smart getting hold of the domain admin credential even before you realize the entire domain is compromised. So what do? Insta-spot deviations. Being able to quickly get on top of the situation, analyze what's the anomaly, where did it originate, why is it anomalous, how is it anomalous, and the whole deal around that. You get like real-time insights on what's the trend, where is it originating, the whole deal around that, and a couple of granularity in terms of user level accesses. So if I have a critical alert saying that this user seems to be portraying some malicious behavior, I should be able to pinpoint to a specific user and get the entire history behind what John has been doing. So John has logged in at a time of a day when he does not usually log in. So 10 p.m. there's a network breach somehow, and then there's a session that follows installation of a file. There's a change in a firewall rule, and then there's file copying and folder actions that are happening. So being able to associate and track back and put all those breadcrumbs together and deriving context out of it and giving you messages that are clear, that are verbal, is the make or break. And being able to understand this is quite difficult because what meets the eye is very, very little. What goes behind is a lot. There's a lot of uncertainty right here as we speak. And two levels to it, one at a user level and one at an entity level. If you can tie those together, you'd be able to monitor and get context like this. So right here, it very clearly says that the user logged in at 5 a.m. in the morning, while the normal logon time is 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. From where did that initiate? Which IP address was the connection being made? Is it a source that is already recognized? You get context. Is there a lateral movement? We just saw how attackers love moving laterally to establish more foothold. Was there a lateral movement? Which IP address triggered that lateral movement? You'd get insights on that. If there's an installation that's happening, was it a file or a folder or a process that got initiated for the first time? Did the user who initiated that did that for the first time? A couple of insights like that that can get you quickly to do a RCA or a root cause analysis. And being able to track privileges goes without saying. Privilege escalation, privilege creep. We're talking about best practices like least privilege approach. We're talking about best practices like zero trust. How are we to implement all of that if we can't track privilege abuse? My recommendation to you would be to find out an IGA solution, identity governance solution, that has a very clear access certification and access review mechanism. So if there's a workflow, even better. So just drop me a message. I'll note that down. I'll give you recommendations on what solutions you can look at from a level of privileged access management and privilege escalation. Spam, again, that's a very important aspect. If it works in tandem with your SIEM solution, nothing better than that. Large volumes of modifications that are happening to files, to folders, to user accounts, to group membership, to GPOs, you will need to be able to track such privilege abuse and get on top of the situation. So that's about privilege abuse. So what we try to do right here is we've tried to put together a compendium of resources. We absolutely understand that things are getting out of hand. In fact, as we speak, we've been working with many organizations around the world, and one common observation in most cases is attackers are stooping really low. We've spoken to multiple healthcare organizations, maybe in the UK. A few of them had recent breaches, and it's really disheartening to know that they get hold of healthcare data. They try and hinder business right there while they're in the front line trying to treat patients. We're talking about lives on the line and businesses on the line and economies on the line while attackers are having a field day. So what we thought was we'd make the tool available for you. So from Manage Engine, what we want to do for you is to make the tool available for you free of cost till the whole situation passes. So at the end of the webinar, I'll give you my email address. You can drop me an email and we can take it forward from there to help you set up the tool and give you full on access and support to set it up. So we're talking about a couple of things right here. We discussed data security. We discussed how the data access governance can be your centerpiece for things like being able to do threat intelligence, being able to do security analytics, how user behavior analytics can come into the picture. All this so that later in time, you don't need to worry about regulatory compliances. All of this happens if you get all these dots connected. Cloud again, that's a huge quantum leap right there. That's something that you need to absolutely take into consideration. So we have a team of 200 people dedicated to help employees or organizations around the world who've gone remote. If you're one of those organizations who've gone remote, and if you need access to the solution, or if you know someone who can find this helpful, please do reach out to us. Log 360 is the name of the solution, and I'll be available to help you out. We've got featured on Gartner as well. We've been doing it for 4 years straight in a row. Guys, you've been such a lovely audience. I'm going to be available for the next 10 minutes to take your questions specific to cybersecurity or identity access management. If you have any questions pertaining to the tool or the frameworks that we were talking about, I was talking about the 25 event IDs that you need to be monitoring while working remotely. We've put together a quick guide for VPN setup and VPN security. I've written a couple of handbooks for administrators and security folks. You can reach out to me. I'll send you the whole deal of the resources. And like I pointed out, if Log 360 is something that can help your organization set up security, please do write to me. We'd be more than happy to help. You've been such a lovely audience. If you have questions, I'm available in the chat to take your questions. And guys, all I request you is to stay safe and take care. And the next time when we meet, I honestly hope we meet under better circumstances. Thank you so much. Do take care. Talk to you real soon. You all take care. Bye-bye. I have a couple of requests already for the videos and the slide decks. They will be sent shortly. If you have a message for me, just drop me in the chat console. I'd appreciate it. If you have any specific questions pertaining cybersecurity, please do drop. I'm taking them already. I'm answering a few right now. If you can ask me more, I can tell you a few more points. Yes, Steve, the solution is available, and you can just drop me a message on this email ID, and I can set you up with our team to help you configure the solution. Yes, it does have a cloud security module too. It's called Cloud Security Plus. AWS, Azure, all of that. Yes, we do monitor and we do give you feed. Yes, it's possible. All right, you've asked me in terms of validity. So with respect to validity, we hope to see the whole thing, go behind us ASAP. We'll be supporting you as long as you're working remotely. Shouldn't be a problem in terms of the licensing. Please, that should be your last concern. We want to honestly help you. That's the thing right here. I hope I've answered your question. The license is available. You just have to drop me an email and I'll have it arranged for you guys. Okay, the identity access management themes is called AD360. That's something that very well integrates with Log360, the solution. Has quite a bit in terms of identity access management for your multi-cloud setup or your hybrid, IAM. We very much do that. That is also possible. You can integrate it with Log360. Oh yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah. We've been featured on Gartner. Yes, that was the last slide. Yep, we've been featured in Gartner for 4 years in a row. Just in case if you'd be interested in going through the report, I'd be able to send that to you as well. Just let me know. Wonderful. I appreciate your time and thank you so much for taking the time. The webinar was recorded. If you need a copy, just let me know. Drop me a message right now on chat. I'd have it arranged. Guys, you all take care and stay safe. Talk to you real soon. Do take good care. Bye bye.